Julian and Friends is an interactive video game which plays as an edutainment show with an introduction song. As we are invited into Julian's house, he introduces his wife, Julia, and discreetly unveils to us that he is planning a surprise birthday party for his wife.
We have all kinds of fun things to do around here. Hey look, it's my lovely wife, Julia. Hi, Julia.
Hey, Julian, who's your new friend?
They're a new visitor.
Aw, how exciting! We love new visitors around here.
That we do.
I'm sorry I can't stay long because I have a few errands to run. But you, dear, can show our new friend around.
My, what a splendid idea that is.
I will be back tonight, dear. I love you.
I love you too. This is perfect. Today is Julia's birthday and we are planning a surprise party for her. Would you like to help?
We need to help Julian organize the party by going around town and getting the help of other characters. In the process, we will meet other characters who need help themselves with certain errands. I already made a video about the demo of the game, which was called 98XX, which you can watch by clicking on the link in the description. As we leave the house to get help from the characters of the Imagination Town to organize the birthday party along with Julian, we first visit Mr. Wright's studio, who happens to be a talking pencil. Julian explains Mr. Wright is the only person here capable of writing the best birthday cards in the town. It's not as if the other characters are illiterate or cannot write, but as Mr. Wright is a literal pencil, he has to act according to the nature of his character and write the best birthday cards. Despite Mr. Wright being well experienced and competent in writing birthday cards, he involves us in helping out, having a pre-written card with blanks, which we are provided several words to choose from to fill out the gaps. At first, the letter seems normal, with good wishes, but when we go over more words which are provided to us, we learn there is something sinister hiding in the backstory. Words such as torment, death, and agonizing can be seen, which in a way have underlining implications that someone or some people are suffering. Next up, the player chooses to visit Gerald in his emporium. Julian asks for the best decoration so they could decorate their house for Julia's birthday. Unfortunately for us, Gerald's emporium was ransacked with all his items being thrown off their shelves. That's when we decide to help him out with restocking the items, which in return Gerald gives us some items for the birthday decoration. Moving on, the player chooses to go to a treasure diving section where they take a boat and go to the ocean to dive and find treasure. After a successful dive finding quite a lot of treasure, they get back into the boat and head back to the shore. They then decide to pay Darcy a visit in her dance studio, where Darcy encourages the player and Julian to learn some dance moves to surprise Julia in her birthday party. After following her moves and learning some neat dance tricks, Darcy promises to attend the party and show others some dance moves too. Eventually, the duo go on to the princess's castle called Angelic Castle. The princess, being called Angelica, welcomes the duo to her beautiful castle. She asks Julian to help her with a choir of frogs singing in honor of the princess. After getting a brief time to speak, Julian explains that he's here because he's organizing a surprise birthday party for his wife, which makes the princess get even more excited, preparing to leave immediately. Soon after getting back home with all the characters being present in Julian's house, he thanks the player for being such an important part of organizing this party, as without him it wouldn't be possible. Soon enough, Julia enters the house, having a big surprise, happy that her friends and husband have thrown this beautiful and thoughtful party for her. On that note, the story comes to an end. Of course, there are a lot of secrets and endings where we learn about the real horror within the story. Inputting a code into the intro page, when Julian goes to Mr. Wright's studio, the dialogue takes a different turn. The pencil tells the player to draw something for Julia's birthday card, trying out a new text-to-speech system. After the player gives the self-aware Mr. Wright access to their computer, Mr. Wright starts acting menacing, telling the player not to worry about getting hacked, especially as he has full control of their computer now. An unnecessary and sinister piece of information, if especially not intending to hack the computer, but whatever. After drawing an image, the player goes to Gerald's emporium, finding him outside his store. Gerald, acting self-aware, complains about his physical design of having no hands as he is supposed to drive and deliver some supplies. Needing Gerald's help for decorations, they help him deliver the supplies by driving his car for him. After delivering the supplies, the duo go to Darcy's dance studio, seeing her struggle finding her dance shoes. Darcy complains her eyesight is poor and maybe she needs to invest in some glasses to see better, when Julian in secrecy gossips to the player that maybe it's not because of poor eyesight, but instead because her character design has given her 2 black holes for eyes rather than proper eyeballs.
Maybe I'm having trouble finding them because of my poor eyesight.
Or maybe it's because her eyes look like 2 black holes.
What was that, darling?
Nothing.
The story starts to take a sinister turn, with the characters becoming self-aware and complaining about their tragic physical characteristics and designs, which are poorly done and have limitations. This time around, the boat for treasure diving has sunk, with Julian having a space rocket going to collect space crystals. When landing back down, Julian starts becoming self-aware as well that all these mini-games are a waste of time, as if being a critic to the game giving it a bad review.
Like so many games these days just feel like they need to force a challenge on you when that's not even necessary. It's just a time waster if you ask me. And who needs a scoring system? Certainly not this game.
They move on and meet with Angelica again back in her castle. She jump scares us, asking Julian and the player to help her find her frogs. While helping the princess, Julian loses his hat, with the princess making a remark that he looks like a bootleg version of another character, clearly referencing Baldi.
Goodness, Julian. You better put that hat back on. Without it, you look like a bootleg version of a character from another game.
Yes, thank you. Now if you excuse me, I've got to finish my errands for today.
Eventually, getting everyone together to surprise Julia, she comes home to reveal they already threw a party for her, which explains the characters are all self-aware. But despite that, the screen cuts to black, with Julia at the table celebrating her birthday, as if she didn't just say that they celebrated her birthday before.
You guys already gave me a surprise party. But a party with the people I love makes my day all the better.
They clearly are putting a show together for the player to entertain them, while they have to repeat the same tasks over and over again. Inputting another code, starting the game over from the beginning, Julia feels off and clearly doesn't want to repeat the same story again, leaving the house just for Julian to throw a surprise party for her again. At this point, they are doomed to repeat the same story over and over again. Julian goes to Gerald's store just to find him staring at a photo of a woman who is distorted. This character is from 98XX game, which happens to be a cursed character. Julian leaves Gerald feeling uneasy.
Why were you staring at this anyway? Did you even hear what I said? Gerald, you're creeping me out, buddy. I'm gonna go now.
Going to Mr. Wright's studio, the game starts distorting Julian.
What even is this place?
All of a sudden things go back to normal, with Julian leaving, going to visit Darcy. Darcy is having a life crisis, who has been thinking everything that she left for has been a lie and that she feels trapped, as if she is someone else. Julian tries to comfort her, saying that she brings them joy with dancing, hoping that she comes to the party later that day. As Julian leaves, the photo Darcy has been holding and looking at is unveiled to be of a mother and a daughter, who are real people than the cartoony game characters. The sinister revelation depicts how Darcy was a mother whose life was taken away from her, doomed to act as a character within the game. Julian subsequently goes on to visit Princess Angelica, who takes him in, telling him the story of a princess called Esther, who lived with her parents in a castle in Eldora. In this book story, a mysterious character dressed in black kills the parents of the princess, which leads to her run away and hide outside. Just then, a voice is heard from behind a bush, luring the princess to follow them talking in a comforting manner. As the princess follows this person, this entity in a horrifying manner explains that the princess is his now. The game is slowly revealing the real backstory of who these game characters are and what became of them. All these characters seem to have been real people who were somehow trapped in this digital world. As Julian goes back home, waiting with the rest of the characters for Julia to arrive, they all become heavily distorted in an eerie way, with the game glitching and crashing. Using a new code and restarting the game, everything seems to be out of order and malfunctioning. The introduction song is heavily distorted, with Julian looking difficult to look at. He simply looks terrifying. The once bright and happy town of imagination has turned into a dark mess, with the background music being distorted. Visiting Gerald, the tone and vibe has completely transformed, with Gerald talking about afterlife and eternal punishment in the lake of fire. He insinuates that he is burning in hell, and he wished someone would prepare him for it earlier.
Unrepentant sinners will live their heart in the lake of fire. I only wish someone told me that sooner.
Moving on and visiting Darcy in her dance studio, she seems to be suffering from the same fate, being heavily distorted and suffering. That's when a slideshow entails the backstory of Darcy. Her tragic story revolved around a husband who beat her day and night. Eventually, Darcy looks for comfort of another man's company, cheating on her abusive husband when it leads to a violent end for her, and presumably her daughter, with the husband seemingly killing them both.
He beat me day and night. My entire body was bleeding. The pain never stopped. I only wanted a way out for myself and our daughter. But I only made things worse.
I cheated. Now I must suffer the consequences.
Because of this indirect action leading to her daughter's death, Darcy explains she now needs to burn for eternity and suffer due to the consequences of her own actions. Next to visit in the list is Princess Angelica, who shows the player something horrific. 3 children who seemingly lost their lives suffering in the world. Angelica explains nothing brings more joy than laughing children, but unfortunately, this place is not a place for children to have fun in. This is a place where the innocence of children is taken away when it is followed by the screams of children. Eventually, we visit Mr. Wright, who transforms into a disfigured and deformed human, telling the protagonist to look at him. Texts are seen on the screen that he saw it all, referring to a tragic incident leading to all their sufferings. The scene cuts to Julian, who screams in remorse and fear, repeatedly saying that he didn't mean it and asking for help when the game crashes yet again.
I didn't mean! Somebody help! Somebody help!
Restarting the game with a new code, we go on to visit Julian. His house is abandoned, being in a neglected condition as if it has been abandoned for a long time. Where could Julian and the rest of the characters be, and how they did all disappear in such a short passage of time? That's when a horrifying scene shows us how all these characters have been killed in a merciless manner. The game crashes and new note files appear on the computer of the player. These notes are written by the developer in the style of Lux. There seems to be some other developer to the game Julian. The developer mentions that people who played the first mods of a game started noticing a new character known as Nightmare. In his second indie game, he manages to see this character who asks the players a series of strange and personal questions, which would corrupt the games and crash the computer, acting as a virus. This makes the dev uncomfortable and very worried, as this virus has found its way into different games of the dev in a mysterious way. As time goes on, the dev who modded a game before and found this bug from then researches some more, finding out this character is some sort of supernatural entity trying to communicate. After some more research, he finds links to this entity to the year 1998, which eventually leads to computers which were developed during that time period, computers known as 98XX, which one still remains in existence as other versions have been destroyed or simply gone. The developer decides to find the 98XX computer and put an end to his torment of being hunted. The final note revealed the developer intended to find the computer, which he did, wanting to transfer all the data to his own personal computer and learn the truth behind it all. On that note, we find a new code which we enter, taking a different turn as we find the developer who is analyzing the game. This person gets off his seat and explains to us that he thought he and some others believed that they deleted the entity, but instead it became even more aggressive. This person explains Ezra Tech cannot be trusted when they show us a secret video.
No limit to the imagination. Our minds are full of ideas every day. However, there's only so much the human mind can accomplish alone. That is why I, Bob Carter, founder of Rozzy Incorporated, am proud to announce its partnership with Myris to create the 98XX, the most powerful computer on the planet, to pave the way for a brighter future.
The video shows Bob Carter, the founder of 98XX, developed a computer which he labeled as the most powerful in the world at that time being. After downloading and unloading some file known as test subjects, we learn more about the backstory of what is going on and the entity or entities trapped within the game. We enter a house with a familiar photo which Darcy was holding. Outside in the backyard, there are two graves which seem to have contained the buried corpses of the person Darcy used to be and her daughter, seemingly the people that died. Their bodies or souls somehow became subjected to an experiment, getting their souls transferred into the game. The house is displayed to us by a character dressed in a robe who seems to be the entity who has been hunting the developer, the character known as Nightmare. Eventually, finding another secret code, we are able to speak directly to this entity. This entity uncovers themselves to reveal that they are in fact a human. She explains she is the only real human left, with all the others having died, some going to good places and some not being so lucky. She is trapped in the virtual world and blames herself for giving birth to a monster. Speaking in riddles and secrets, this person thanks the player for speaking to her, as she has been alone for a very long time, bidding him farewell and hoping the protagonist will live a happy life. Now let's go over the lore and who these characters are. A man named John Monkford develops a game called Jumping Julian sometime in 1998. A company known as Dreamer Studios publishes the game. John's wife, Diana, and his daughter, Marissa, leave John for the founder of Calvis Games, whose name is unknown. John eventually pulls Jumping Julian from the shelves after suffering from the sadness of learning his ex-wife and daughter died in a car crash, and after a critic by the name of Jason Storm leaving a harsh review on the video game, causing John to become severely depressed. After some time, John gets hired by Rozzy Incorporation, the people behind 98XX Computer, when the company also hires the critic, Jason Storm. In a fit of rage and for retaliation, John experiments and manages to discover a breakthrough in science, which he uses to transfer Jason Storm into the Julian game, making him become the main character. He managed to perform this experiment due to the powerful and innovative chip of the 98XX computer that Rozzy developed. After holding John as a suspect for Jason's disappearance, the company fires him, which leads to John's depression to become more severe, retaliating against the Rozzy organization and putting harmful messages into the computer game and displaying it to other employees. This leads to the lives of some employees being taken. As the police investigates the deaths and disappearances, they find the corpse of John, leading to the organization to shut down. Presumably, Darcy is the ex-wife of John, as she holds a photo of herself and her daughter, even confessing that she cheated and that she has to face the consequences of her actions. As Julian walks into Mr. Wright's emporium, he sees him transform, becoming creepy when he starts shouting that he didn't mean any of this to happen, and then screams for help. So clearly he is Jason Storm, who wrote the critical review of the game, doomed to become part of the game himself, feeling remorse for his actions and the consequences that he is facing. On the other hand, Mr. Wright, the pencil who writes, could be John who developed the game. We see him tormenting and taunting Julian with a text saying that he saw it all. This could be a reference to the bad review Jason left for his game, being one of the reasons that he retaliated and made all these characters get trapped in the game. On the other hand, Princess Angelica has an ambiguous backstory as she explains her parents died by a mysterious character. In a newspaper, we learn that 3 siblings disappeared in a gaming convention, one being Ellie Miller, a 12-year-old. So it is possible Ellie Miller is the same character as Princess Angelica, especially as they both share the same age. Angelica is said to be also 12 years old, so it is quite possible they are the same person. And eventually, Gerald is someone who lost his parents. This leads to him resorting to drinking alcohol and becoming alcoholic. Knowing from my previous video, we learned that the ex-wife and the daughter of John died in a car accident after colliding with a drunk driver. This drunk driver could be the trapped soul possessing the character of Gerald, as we also hear from him that he is burning in hell and suffering for his actions. He happens to survive the accident with a mysterious person paying for his bail, offering him a job, so potentially that could be John. This leaves out Julia, Julian's wife. There is a specific character known as Jenny Peterson, whom we see a photo of having a disturbing smile. Could this lady be the one possessing the character of Julian? We even see Gerald holding her photo, staring at it. The story remains ambiguous with so much left to discover, but the developer has announced a new game that he is working on called 98XX Rebooted, which could potentially expand a lot more on the story. And that's about it for this video, folks. If you enjoyed it, make sure to stay tuned for more by hitting on the subscribe button and the notification bell. As always, it's been your host R. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.